Soccer? But it's really called football. Soccer? The creators called it football. Soccer? You know, you play it with your feet. Reading between the headlines. Soccer? But it's really called football. Soccer? Welcome back, my friends, to Reading Between the Headlines. I'm your host, Asaf Nisim of Peruse, the News, the live show where we catch up on the latest Chelsea news together, maybe some older stuff as well, and of course, live football and prosper, as one should. Now, before we continue, if you are new to the channel, why not go ahead and like, subscribe, hit the bell to know when we go live. Yes, it rhymes, and that is all the more reason to heed the call, because you can just jump on the bandwagon. This channel is small now, but it is growing, and we will eventually be huge and dominate the airspaces. Well, maybe. And we need you to engage by joining the team on the live stream. Now, on the docket today, from ESPN's James Ollie, quote, Chelsea's transfer plan while okay, scene, I am here, I am now focused, we are ready to go. From ESPN's James Ollie, Chelsea's transfer plan, wild spending spree or wild strategy. From The Athletic, Chelsea bound sensation Kendry Páez, the bigger the challenge, the better he gets. That's an older one, but I figured a lot of people don't know what's going on with him, and seemed like a nice way to get attuned with that. After that, we have from the Daily Mail via TNT Sports, Chelsea star is named as one of the Premier League signings of the summer by Peter Crouch, as the former forward picks out his top 3 moves from the window. After that, we'll head on over to Chelseastagram, or Chelsea Instagram, and stalk some of our favorite Chelsea players. Why not? Now, before I get to the first story, I want to throw up this poll and see what Chelsea fan opinions are like here, since it looks like Malo Gusto won't make it back in time for Chelsea's next league match at Bournemouth, and Reece James is also slated to remain on the sidelines. Who should deputize at right back while Gusto and James are out? So here we go. I'm going to put that poll in there. Start poll. This is what it looks like. Okay. Who should deputize at right back while Gusto and James are out? First choice. Everybody knows my favorite. Being a little sarcastic here. Axel Disasi, who obviously has played there before, and I will say I do prefer him at right back or any fullback position than I do prefer him at any center back position. That's for sure. Seems like less of a liability. Second choice is going to be Mark Cucurella with Vega or Renato Vega coming in and going in at left back, or Colwell sliding over, and then maybe Badiashile or Tosin filling in at Adeobio filling in at center back. Third option is an interesting one, which has happened sometime before, but not obviously often. That is not his position, but Moises Caicedo. Some people might prefer him there. And then the last option, because obviously Lavia is supposed to be coming back, so we should have cover there, and Enzo Fernandez still in the conversation. There's always Dewsbury Hall. And the fourth choice is other. Just in case there's something I missed, some sort of combination I haven't considered, figure maybe y'all will let me know. Okay. What's wrong? Why can't I put this poll out? Won't let me put... Oh, 1 in 35. Oh, this is too many. Let's just go with Mark Cucurella. And then we will start the poll now. Engage. Ladies and gents, give me your opinions. Put your opinions in. Opinions. And we will see how the people decide. And let's see what Enzo Maresca comes up with. That's a who should deputize, not a necessarily who do you think Maresca will go with. I think probably he'll just go with Axel Disasi. Yeah. Yeah. Not happy with it, but that's probably what'll happen. And maybe, and like I say, maybe it's okay given that he is less of a liability there than he would be in the middle of the park. That's just my opinion. Not a fan, not a fan, not a fan. Okay, that out of the way. We will get to the first story of the week. It's a bit of a long one, but it is definitely an interesting piece put out by ESPN. I will warn you if you are a Chelsea fan, okay? This story, this piece, is not exactly the most bright and optimistic view of Chelsea. It seems to cast shade a lot on Chelsea's administration. But to be fair, a lot of us these days, a lot of us Chelsea fans are kind of in that boat, and we're thinking that ourselves. But ESPN, James Ollie at ESPN really has put it into writing, and it's scary. It's there's a way to be optimistic, and we'll just go through it. It's pretty long, so bear with me, but we're gonna read right through it, and we'll chime in wherever it's appropriate, right? Okay, so let's pull that up. There we go. Boom. There it is. Chelsea transfer plan. Wild spending spree or wise strategy by James Ollie. Additional reporting by Gab Marcotti and Tor Christian Carlson. 22 minutes into Chelsea's new Premier League season, the fans at Stamford Bridge roused themselves into a chant after their team fell 1-0 down to Manchester City. Conor Gallagher, they sang. Not the team's name, not their new manager, not even one of the players signed at an outlay of more than £1.2 billion since Todd Boehly and Clearlake Capital completed their takeover of the club in May 2022. No, none of those players. And appropriately so, Gallagher, Khona Khalacha, is an academy graduate with a genuine affinity for Chelsea. The fans knew he was leaving the club, spending the previous days exiled from the first team group as part of a bomb squad, a term used in British sports to describe players marginalized by their managers, and in Chelsea's case, made up of around 15 individuals, and effectively training in a holding pattern as they awaited confirmation of a new destination before the summer transfer window closed on August 30th. Under Boehly Clearlake, the Blues have spent eye-watering amounts signing 40 players while moving on or releasing 38 more, ripping up football's conventions on shorter-term contracts in 3 to 5 year range. They have signed many of these players to 7, 8, or even 9-year deals. When considering a range of backroom staff and scouting changes, the scale of personnel turnover at all levels of the club is surely unprecedented in elite-level football history. During previous owner Roman Abramovich's 19-year tenure, the Blues never went 2 consecutive seasons without silverware. Yet, this is a different era, obviously. We'll just throw that out there. Yet the Boehly Clearlake era is still waiting for its first trophy, boasting Premier League finishes of 12th and 6th, with Enzo Maresca, the 4th permanent manager, charged with the task of making it all come together. Yes, it has been a grim time for us, but we soldier on as Chelsea fans, despite maybe our cynicism with regards to the new owners and the administration, right? What are we going to do? We're here. We got to do this. We got to support the team. Quote, "It is not a mess like it looks from the outside. Absolutely not," Maresca said on August 21st. I tend to believe Maresca. He seems like a straight shooter, a little political lately in press conferences. Maybe he's learning how to be political, but I tend to buy into what he has to say. The Chelsea fans are yet to be convinced. I'm one of those Chelsea fans that's not convinced, but I don't necessarily think it is as chaotic. But trust me, we will get to it because this article has a lot to say about that. They sang Gallagher's name partly because he was one of the club's best players last season, but also in a forlorn attempt to show Boehly and Clearlake they want something tangible to cling to, something they recognize as their own. 3 days later, Gallagher joined Atletico Madrid for a reported transfer fee of €40 million. This is important. Gallagher's transfer, because he was an academy graduate, represented pure profit in accounting terms. But whatever the financial benefits, a popular and effective player departed. Yes, as you know, financial fair play, or PSR, as far as the Premier League is concerned and the FA is concerned, does not count expenditures in the academy towards your losses. So you could spend a lot of money in the academy, and then sell for pure profit. Perhaps a little piece of the club's soul went with him too. A lot of us are feeling that. Meanwhile, the outside world is watching with a mixture of intrigue and incredulity. Incredulity meaning disbelief, as speculation surrounding the club's compliance with the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules persists after such lavish spending. Welcome to Chelsea in 2024, a club in an identity crisis triggered by external factors, but the prolonged nature of which is their own making. Is there a method to their madness? How did they get here? What is the process? What is their process? And what could come next? All good questions, all good questions. In a sense, the two ends of Raheem Sterling's loan move from Chelsea to Arsenal in the final hours of last week's transfer deadline day sum up the respective states of both clubs. And I gotta say, this one I really hate, not just because we let Sterling go and to keep Mykhailo Mudryk, but for reasons you're about to find out if you don't already know. During a maelstrom of late activity at the end of August, the Blues were scrambling to find a home for the 29-year-old, who was making £325,000 a week on the fringes of the first team squad. Pretty sure he came on under Bully Clearlake. Days before the loss to Man City, Maresca told Sterling that he was not a key part of his plans. Sterling, who sources say was shocked by the decision given his prominent role in preseason, reacted by asking for a permanent move to kickstart his career. That was Chelsea's preference too, but as time wore on, it became apparent Sterling's high wage was prohibitive to any transfer, especially given he had 3 years left on that deal, meaning his wages were too high to be able to shell him out last minute and find the right club for somebody that's willing to pay that's willing to pay that much for somebody. Sources have told ESPN that Chelsea called a number of clubs to gauge their interest in Sterling. That already doesn't bode well when you're calling clubs. you're just like cold calling clubs. Hey, you want to buy Raheem Sterling? You interested? Interest from teams in the Saudi Pro League, the Blues' ideal destination from Sterling, was quickly rebuffed by the England international, according to sources. Makes sense. He doesn't want to go there. He actually cares about his career. In the final hours of the window, the Stamford Bridge outfit made it known to Arsenal that not only would they accept a loan, they would acquiesce to a relatively small contribution to his salary package. This is the part that pisses me off the most, honestly, because this is just so whack. The Gunners settled and relatively content with their summer business, having added €45 million defender Riccardo Calafiori and €32.5 million midfielder Michael Merino, while making goalkeeper David Raya's loan move from Brentford permanent, but open to bolstering manager Mikel Arteta's attacking options, decided it was too good an opportunity to miss. Yeah, obviously, and you'll see why. The final deal with Chelsea, no loan fee, okay, and a requirement to pay less than half of Sterling's wages, saw them land a player with whom Arteta had developed a close working relationship during 3 years together at Manchester City. The end result means that over the course of the season-long loan, Chelsea will effectively be paying Sterling in the region of £10 million to play for Arsenal. I just pause a second there. We are paying £10 million for Raheem Sterling. Okay, arguably one of the best out-and-out wingers in the Premier League, to play for a rival club, Arsenal, a rival London club, Arsenal. £10 million. We're paying more than half of his wages to play for a London rival. Just consider what's going on there. The kid isn't even 30 years old, or maybe he's 30 years old by now, 29, 30 years old. He's in the prime of his playing career. He has so much experience. He's exceptionally gifted. Okay, whether you like the form he's been in lately, he's even had great moments for us last season, okay, and great spells even. There's no reason to think that Mikel Arteta couldn't make this kid, get him back to his, exceedingly form, full, good form spells, for Arsenal and do something big for Arsenal. Okay, we'll move on. There's plenty of this article left to go. But this one just really pissed me off radically. Before Sterling's move was finalized, the Blues made Atletico Madrid forward Joao Felix the 39th signing of the Boli Clear Lake era for approximately 50 million euros. Then, on deadline day, they made Jadon Sancho the 40th on loan from Manchester United. So we're taking Manchester United's throwaways, although I'm not entirely disappointed with Jadon Sancho. I think he can do something for us, and I think Chelsea fans generally are kind of excited to see what he can do, just because we haven't had anybody really come out and, we have Madueke, but there's room to have players rise above the rest. With an obligation to sign permanently next summer for around £25 million. That I read somewhere else that's if Chelsea finish in a certain position in the league, which you kind of assume that we will. I think it was like 10th. Hopefully we do. Jeez, I mean, I shudder to think if that's what happens to us again. It's like Manchester United style spiral. Both can operate as wingers, both in similar positions and styles to Sterling, and join a squad blessed with multiple options in wide areas already, including Cole Palmer, Noni Madueke, Mikhailo Mudryk, Pedro Neto, and Christopher Nkunku. Granted, I think Cole Palmer and Christopher Nkunku play their best football down the middle. Only two, or at a push, 3 of these players are likely to start every week in a conventional system, despite costing the club a combined £256 million in transfer fees. Yeah. Furthermore, Chelsea currently have no fewer than 8 goalkeepers on their books. Robert Sanchez, Philip Jorgensen, Marcus Bettinelli, Lucas Bergstrom, Gaga Slonina, Eddie Beach, Georgi Petrovic, and Kepa Arrizabalaga. The latter 4 were sent out on loan, but the club still signed a 9th, Mike Penders, who will join from Genk next summer. The squad building in these positions appears nothing short of farcical. However, it is asymptomatic of a clear change in approach from the ownership's original strategy after completing their takeover in 2022. Yeah, it was a little different. Chelsea's sale was conducted and completed under worldwide scrutiny. We all know this. Beginning in abrupt fashion, there's a little reminder as to how things went down. The United Kingdom government identified Abramovich as an alleged associate of Russia President Vladimir Putin and had begun sanctioning such individuals following the country's invasion of Ukraine, which happened in February of 2022. Abramovich had his assets frozen, travel restrictions. Praise Abramovich. We miss you. We love you. I mean, those were the golden days, weren't they, at this point? Travel restrictions placed upon him and was disqualified as a director. Chelsea were allowed to continue to operate under the terms of a government-issued license until the end of May. If you remember that, it was terrible, but we did get to keep functioning as a club. Players could not sign new contracts and club merchandise could not be moved on. A frantic sale process began in March and ended on May 30th with Boli and Clearlake agreeing a £2.5 billion price, the highest ever paid for a team in world sport, with a commitment to invest a further £1.75 billion in infrastructure. Again, as far as the PSR rules, I remind you, as far as the PSR rules go, infrastructure investments do not count towards your loss expenditures, right? So you could spend as much as you want, and as long as it's on infrastructure, it's not going to count towards the 3-year £105 million allowable losses, right? Okay, that's that. Also, by the way, I read somewhere else that the Boli Clearlake Group has an investment portfolio of £90 billion worldwide. So £2.5 billion of a price is like a fraction of the stuff that they own. So bear that in mind, in perhaps how much they covet this Chelsea project, although I wouldn't go that far and that dark and cynical into it. ESPN has previously reported that Boli and Clearlake Capital conducted a 100-day review shortly after taking over, but the churn at executive level began quickly. Chairman Bruce Buck, Director Marina Granevskaya, bless her, God bless her, Chief Executive Officer Guy Lawrence, Technical and Performance Director Peter Cech, and Head of International Scouting Scott McLaughlin, all departed. We do know that. There was a fire sale of administrators. Sources with knowledge of the situation have told ESPN that Chelsea wanted Cech to stay on, yes, and he did confirm this, but the longtime club goalkeeper with a career spanning from 2004 to 2015 declined. Sources also, he had some BS reasons for it, but it did seem like he just did not like what was going on. Like, he didn't say that out and out, but he said something to the effect of, when it's a new project and you have your old way of doing things in mind, that I don't want to start with this new way of doing things and have my old way of doing things affect the new project. It seemed like a BS statement at the time, and it still does. Sources also said part of the overhaul was related to a desire from the new owners to distance themselves from potential problematic activities carried out by the previous regime, leading Bowley Clear Lake to self-report themselves to UEFA and the Premier League for submitting incomplete financial information, which reportedly included multi-million-pound payments to undisclosed offshore entities with connections to football intermediaries, meaning that the club before, the ownership and the administration before, were making payments to offshore intermediaries for whatever reasons and weren't reporting them necessarily to UEFA or to UEFA and the Premier League. And I remember that happened. They were trying to get ahead of any problems and any penalties they might incur. In July 2023, UEFA fined the Blues 10 million euros for those transgressions. Okay, so they did pay for that, but they were in good graces, I guess, with the powers that be, with the Premier League verdict expected by the end of the year. During the interim period, Bowley, who also owns the Los Angeles Dodgers as part of the Guggenheim Baseball Management Consortium, stepped up to operate as sporting director, and Chelsea's spending began. That's probably where things went wrong when Todd Bowley became our sporting director for the first time ever, not having owned a football club or soccer club, whatever you call it, in his career. They had not been able to lay the scouting groundwork in the months leading up to June and July, as is customary, because of the widespread state of flux. The subsequent explosion of transfer activity was arguably driven by two things: a desire to make a statement about their commitment to success, and an agreement with then-coach Thomas Tuchel's assessment that the club needed to be aggressive in the market. Okay. Sterling was the first permanent signing, as we talked about earlier, joining for Man City for a £47.5 million fee and agreeing a massive 5-year contract. 5 year seeming massive at the time. Sources have told ESPN that a sign of Chelsea's early naivete was that Sterling's deal did not contain standard reduction clauses in the event that the club underperformed and failed to qualify for the Champions League, which we all know happened. One agent who dealt with Bowley that summer told ESPN that when his player was in the middle of moving to another Premier League club, Bowley rang him to inquire the asking price. He was told around £12 million. Shortly afterwards, Bowley contacted him again, offering £14 million. What? And this is a funny anecdote. The agent asked why they wouldn't go to £13 million as the next logical step. Bowley told him he thought the number 13 was unlucky. Now, that's a nice little colorful anecdote to throw in there. Joke or not, Chelsea's contemporaries quickly formed a negative view of the new ownership. Of the 9 players Chelsea signed in that first transfer window under Bowley Clearlake: Sterling, Slonina, Kalidou Koulibaly, Carney Chukwuemeka, Mark Cucurella, Cesare Casade, Wesley Fofana, Aubameyang, and Dennis Zakaria on loan. Only 3 are still part of the first team squad, and 3 more out on loan, and the remaining 3 departed. The stockpiling of players in a bloated squad led to some having to get ready for sessions in the corridors at the club's Cobham training base during Graham Potter's reign because the changing rooms were not big enough, according to sources. One scout who works for a club in a Big 5 European league, agreeing to speak to ESPN anonymously said, quote, Perhaps Chelsea knows something we don't, but their squad building makes no sense to me, and I can't see how it makes sense to Chelsea or the players who are brought in as sixth choice center back or the seventh attacking midfielder. Yeah. The only winners here, as far as I can understand, are the agents brokering the deals. You know what that means. Getting that money. Money, 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 money. It's such a long article, but it's juicy. It's juicy. I like it. So, what followed that first window was a shift towards assembling an elite and comprehensive recruitment team capable of identifying and acquiring the best young talent in world football, even if it meant continuing to manage a squad much larger than necessary. Premier League squads are limited to 25 players, but by the close of Friday's transfer window, the West London club carried 30 footballers who would expect to be part of the first team and another handful in the U21s who are pushing for involvement. Okay, that's usual. Chelsea's recruitment staff is nearly as plentiful. It includes co-sporting directors Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, co-director of recruitment and talent Joe Shields, Director of Global Recruitment Sam Jewell, Chief Analyst Kyle McCauley, Head of Goalkeeping Ben Roberts, Head of Performance Services Nick Chad, and Loans and Pathways Manager Josh Marsh. Some within the game believe there are too many voices involved in decision-making. Gee, you think? Quote, I think the fact that they have two sporting directors tells its own story. One longtime sporting director wishing to remain anonymous told ESPN, quote, the fact that you have two makes me think that they have little power or influence. The idea to build a squad in this manner goes well beyond any mandate of a sporting director, let alone the normal working methods of a sporting director. I think an experienced person with authority in that role would have said, hang on a bit, I'm not sure this is the way to do it. At least I've still to find a colleague in the football industry that believes the Chelsea model is best practice. That's not saying everything, you know. Sometimes you got to do things a little bit differently. Am I right? It's not always, you know, the way everybody else does it is the way to get it done. You try and think about how this article could be just, you know, journalists tend to have a narrative, right? They kind of have a narrative almost before they even start writing the darn thing. And so I kind of like to think about these articles, and try and sort of overlay my own charitable interpretation of any situation. Although it's very hard at this point, given that as Chelsea fans, we are a little biased in that things have not been going well. So, and the numbers we're sort of seeing being spent on these players has been astronomical. Anyway, so that's that. Sources have told ESPN that both Bowley and co-owner Behdad Eghbali, co-founder of Clearlake, believed the club's analytics department was undervalued and there was an over-reliance on agent relationships in their transfer dealings. A source close to Clearlake told ESPN that the club is now spending 7 times as much on recruitment staff and data than when they completed their takeover, placing much greater stock in the data points available to them. Hence, Chelsea began pursuing younger players, primarily under the age of 24, on long-term contracts that were unprecedented in football, but much more common in baseball. Because the Dodgers committed to more than $1 billion in 22 years worth of contracts to sign transcendent talents. Nobody should know these people if they, like me, don't follow baseball. Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto this past offseason. Ohtani's deal included an unprecedented deferral structure, one that sent shockwaves through baseball and will see him paid for 10 years beyond his playing days at Dodger Stadium. Football is not used to such long contract lengths. At one point this summer, Sky Sports produced a graphic suggesting that the 42 players on Chelsea's books had a total of 191 years left on their contracts. The next biggest number in the Premier League was Tottenham Hotspur with 97. That's a lot of years. Sources close to Clearlake told ESPN that this approach was informed by various factors, starting with the loss of Antonio Rudiger and Andreas Christensen on free transfers to Real Madrid and Barcelona, respectively, in 2022. Such a talented pair of center backs leaving for nothing was seen internally as a failure, never to be repeated. I mean, that's really anecdotal, but Sources tell them. Further lessons were learned in that initial flurry of recruitment, in that signings on big wages who don't work out quickly become extremely difficult to move on from, as evidenced by the situation facing Ben Chilwell, last year's vice captain, who now makes up part of Chelsea's bomb squad. Romelu Lukaku, should I spit? No, that's too much. But definitely happy to see his name off the books. Romelu Lukaku was already on the books, having arrived in 2021, a £97.5 million signing, earning £350,000 a week. But he had fallen out of favor and spent 2 years on loan before finally joining Napoli for £30 million this summer. A source close to Clearwake told ESPN that the contract philosophy can be summed up as, quote, if you play, we'll pay. So young, talented players on the cusp of establishing themselves are more likely to take a lower initial wage on a long-term contract with incentives built in. Another source added that the variables in these contracts, depending on the player, range from 25 to 50%. A 7, 8, or 9-year contract offers security to the player and also provides a pathway within the contract for a salary to increase dramatically if certain targets are met. In an ideal world, the core group grows and flourishes together, bonded in the knowledge that they are Chelsea for life. So the idea here being that the author is trying to say, well, you've got all of these like solo individual incentives in the contracts that this is the structure that Chelsea is going for, solo individual incentives, when really there should be, in an ideal world, a core group that flourishes together, bonded in the knowledge that they are Chelsea for life. That's the narrative, obviously. Last month, Palmer agreed what was widely reported as a new 9-year contract. God bless him. However, sources have told ESPN that in reality, it was an extension triggered by his own individual performances. Okay, so that's supposedly enforces that methodology, because Palmer is obviously working out, right? Palmer, who was named PFA Young Player of the Year after registering 22 goals and 11 assists in 33 league appearances in 23-24, exceeded all expectations and was consequently rewarded with an improved deal as per the terms of his original incentivized contract. Chelsea will hope their collection of young players progress in the same way as Palmer, whose sources close to Clear Lake suggest is proof their policy can work effectively, right? So they had the policy, they gave him a long contract, they had incentives, individual incentives, that if he would kick ass and take names, that his contract would be extended to some crazy number of years, affording him at lower wages, right? We're talking lower wages. I don't know what Connor's, what is Cole Palmer on? What are his wages? Cole Palmer wages. Oh, let me pull that up real quick. So go to Capology. That's where I usually go. Okay, so that's seemingly high. As you'll find out later in this article, Chelsea have like the lowest average wages in the league at like £60,000, and Cole Palmer's is £130,000. But the idea being that longer contracts, lower wages with a high transfer fee amortized over many years. Plus, that's part of this, the Bowley way right now, the Clear Lake Bowley way. Okay, so there is an immediate financial benefit too. Chelsea were originally able to spread the transfer fee over a longer period. Yeah, the length, which you'll find out, the length of the contract, but UEFA and the Premier League eventually closed what they saw as a loophole to financial regulations by limiting the time a fee could be amortized to 5 years. Right. So, point being, we talked about this, if you have a contract worth £100 million, right? And it's a 10-year contract, that means you only have to include 10 million pounds of expenditure per year of the contract, right? So the 3-year period that you're afforded in PSR to lose a total of 105 million pounds or 35 million pounds per year, it's only 10 million pounds that counts towards that. And of course, you do have earnings and stuff that weigh against that as well. But the point is that only 10 million pounds of that 100 million pound contract are counted. That just made that up because 10 years is a nice even number, and so is 100 million. Anyway, that loophole is gone. There's no longer that loophole. You can't have a 100 million pound transfer fee 10-year contract. You're not going to be able to amortize that across 10 years. You can only do 5 years. So that would be 20 million pounds a year if you make that purchase of 100 million pounds. Under this plan, any players who did not progress could be moved on to a wider range of clubs because they would not be on huge wages. True. Right now, as you saw with Raheem Sterling, the reason Chelsea were very limited and in the end are subsidizing Raheem Sterling's wages, literally paying 10 million pounds this year for him to play for London rivals Arsenal. The reason that happened is because his wages were so high. Okay, he's on 350,000 pounds a week. So Chelsea, in order to, because Maresca says he's not on my tree, he's not on my plans, he's not playing for me, in order to make the best of a really terrible situation, decided, okay, we're going to put our faith in the manager and just loan him out to Arsenal and pay 10 million pounds this year just for his wages. Straight losses. And so, no loan fee, by the way, either. And so, their assault on the market began in earnest. They broke the British transfer record twice in little more than 6 months, first signing Enzo Fernandez from Benfica for £106.8 million before parting with £115 million for Brighton and Hove Albion's Moises Caicedo. Both players occupied the same position in central midfield, Fernandez for a 9th season. Right? Oh, sorry. Fernandez signed an 8.5-year deal, Caicedo an 8-year contract with an option for a 9th season. Yeah, so again, but those are grandfathered in. And also, Mudryk and Benoit Badiashile signed for 8 years, Romeo Lavia for 7, and more recently, Neto and Felix signed 7-year deals. Those are not going to be amortized either over 7 years because Neto and Felix signed recently, and that is down to a 5-year limit. So, on those expenditures, sources close to Clear Lake argue that these deals are evidence of their policy working as intended. The average Premier League wage is £72,000 a week. Chelsea's, this is the average Premier League wage across all teams, okay? That means all the low teams, all the higher teams. Chelsea's is now around £60,000 a week thanks to their change in approach. £60,000 a week. That's lower than the league average. Okay, so that's saying something. That is a statement in and of itself. One source added that this £60,000 figure is down from around £200,000 a week, which they inherited from the previous ownership. But that worked for us. We were winning trophies. Not anymore. Not anymore. Then there's Estevao and Kendry Paez, which we will be getting to next on the show, at least Kendry Paez. The two teenagers from Brazil and Ecuador, respectively, who will join the club in 2025, are talents coveted by Europe's leading clubs, and their signings seen as a major coup for the club. Some of their recruitment has been more luck than judgment. However, ESPN has previously reported how Chelsea only signed Palmer last summer after moves from Michael Olise, then of Crystal Palace, and Mohamed Kudus, then of Ajax, had faltered. 2 points of contention arise from this strategy, however. Okay, need to crap on Chelsea as much as possible. Palmer, that wasn't a shrewd transfer. Palmer was just lucky. Y'all were going for Michael Olise of Crystal Palace and Mohamed Kudus of Ajax. And you messed up there. You just picked up Cole Palmer. It was kind of last minute, to be fair. This is probably accurate. And now he's our best player. Firstly, any player not offered a long-term deal will immediately feel undervalued. Consider for... really, though? I mean... that's just a weird. I don't. All right, we'll continue. Consider, for example, what played out with Gallagher. Sources have told ESPN that the England midfielder rejected 3 contract offers, one last summer, another in June, and a third in July, but the longest proposal he was given was for 2 years with the option for a third. Those sources added that his pay would have been competitive, but the contract length was a reflection that he was not viewed as a key member of the squad, especially with fellow central midfielders Caicedo, Fernandez, and Lavia all signed through at least 2030. Something tells me that that is not the reason Gallagher left. I mean, why would you really care if you're his age? I don't know, what is he, 25, 26? And if his wages were competitive, what does it matter how long his contract is? 2 years with a possible third? Like, play a year, play 2 years, see what happens, prove your worth again, and continue playing for Chelsea instead of going to Atletico Madrid. I don't know, something seems fishy. That doesn't seem like the whole story there, to be honest. Secondly, the pressure these long-term deals place on the manager is immense. He is undeniably the most expendable and interchangeable element of this model. Mauricio Pochettino was given a 2-year contract and parted company with the club after 1 season. Sources cited frustrations in working within the current operating model, echoing what one source said about Tuchel's brief, tense time working under Boli Clearlake. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's tough to be a manager when you're walking into a side and all the players and on the books have 8 to 9 year contracts, and you want to be able to mold the team to your liking. Perhaps learning from the instability a short-term deal can create, Maresca was handed a 5-year contract. The Italian knew what he was signing up for, taking a hard line and creating the bomb squad to ensure the football and finance departments were aligned through a turbulent summer. Although it's causing a lot of trouble for the club right now in terms of having a bunch of players on the books and paying out a ton of money for players that are really not in in his plans. One other element that may contribute to this overall shift in strategy has been the dynamic behind the scenes between Boli and Clearlake. Sources close to Chelsea have consistently and strenuously denied any breakdown in relationship, but other sources suggest Boli and Eghbali are nowhere near as close as when the takeover was completed. Sources say Boli has taken a step back from the day-to-day management, with Eghbali now seen as the most influential figure at an executive level. The pair were pictured together in discussion in Eghbali's box at Chelsea's opening weekend defeat to Manchester City. And if I remember correctly, when we went down 2-0, Boli left his box, and I was particularly ticked off to see the chairman at Chelsea leave his box because we were down 2-0. That is embarrassing and a sad state of affair for this club. A source close to Clearlake told ESPN that they have indeed become more active since the first summer of ownership, but their role has never fundamentally changed and is in line with other investments in which they are majority shareholders. The source added that the Clearlake view owning Chelsea as a privilege. They prefer to operate by keeping a low profile, by leaving your box before the game is over. Boli also still has sign off on every big decision, and nothing within the partnership is impacting the way the club functions and operates. Okay, that's one sort of countervailing narrative. Everything's fine and dandy. Everything's the same. Chelsea have undoubtedly ruffled feathers with this approach to squad management, but some are also questioning whether they have broken the rules. Quote, "They made a mockery of the system which has been put in place to limit spending," said the scout for a club in a Big 5 European league. "If you're wealthy enough, you can do as you wish." PSR rules dictate Premier League clubs cannot post a loss of more than £105 million over a 3-year period. Yes, Chelsea announced an £89.9 million loss in the year ending June 30th, 2023, but that figure would have been £166.4 million without the sale of 2 hotels to a sister company, which is all over the news right now. From Chelsea FC Holdings Ltd. to Blueco 22 Properties Ltd. Both companies are subsidiaries of Blueco 22 Ltd., Chelsea's holding company. The Premier League voted against preventing such sales in June, but they are yet to be determined as fair market value under the league's associated party transactions rules. UEFA, however, who have their own financial fair play regulations, currently ban this type of transaction. A source told ESPN that UEFA believe Chelsea would have been sanctioned under financial fair play rules had they qualified for European competition last season. Meaning we were in breach, and because we didn't qualify for European competition last season, it didn't matter because UEFA has much more strict financial fair play rules than the PSR. Like, you can't lose as much money over the 3-year period. They have other sort of regulations in place, like a squad to cost ratio. You can look it up. I did talk about it in one of my shorts if you want to check that out. And while we're here, since we've already been reading this article for like 40 minutes, why don't I give you another marketing pitch? Hey guys, anybody in here, like, subscribe, hit the bell to know when I go live so you can be here for these perusings of the news. And here we are perusing hard and deep into this ESPN article. I'm not sure that it is preferred content, but we're trying things out, and I'm willing to hear y'all out in the chat. So make sure, if you're like, gee, Asaf, that sucks, do something else, that you tell me in the chat, because I would greatly appreciate it. And it is so valuable having your opinion on here. Let's see if anybody, check the poll. You can also weigh in on my stream long poll that I usually put out. And back to the article. A source close to Clear Lake told ESPN that they are confident of complying with PSR for 24-25, as well as the previous 2 years. The source denied reports Chelsea were looking to sell the training ground and suggested that the hotel deals in question had been cleared after assessment for fair market value. Basically what they're saying is that Chelsea are just selling in order to not breach profit and sustainability rules or financial fair play rules. Chelsea are just, since it's this big investment group that has other subsidiary investment groups, they're just selling properties and assets with like these 2 hotels from within the Bowley Clear Lake investment group to other subsidiaries of the investment group in order to avoid massive losses. But Manchester City was doing this with players, sending Frank Lampard to NYCFC, who knows what, I don't even remember what they paid, but doing these sorts of dealings between sister companies to avoid massive losses at one entity or another entity, because some entities are more under a microscope, more subject to these penalties. And so, yeah, that's the allegation. The allegation is that Chelsea sold these 2 hotels probably for an inflated amount of money to a sister company. But apparently these sources have close to Clear Lake, told ESPN that no, they have been cleared for an assessment of fair market value. Because if it's not fair market value, whatever the institution would be is deciding what. They're not deciding, but they're agreeing what fair market value is. And if you're inflating the numbers so that you don't have massive losses and sell the property at a much inflated price, then you're getting away with something that's cheating, perhaps. But there's a lot of questions surrounding all these profit and sustainability rules in the first place. How these rules put in place in the first place really sort of solidify massive clubs staying in their position, because massive clubs have massive earnings, meaning they can spend tons of money on players and et cetera, and not have these massive losses, while smaller clubs that might have a new investor that wants to come in and spend a bunch of money because he's hoping down the line to really start winning more immediately by spending, and then maybe down the line recouping some of those losses, because the notoriety of winning will invariably expand your reach and your marketability, et cetera. So really there's a lot of critics, including myself, I have to say, that think these PSR regulations kind of benefit the big clubs in the first place. Like, it sounds like you're putting it in, we're gonna really limit spending and whatever by putting in these rules, but in actuality you're really just limiting the spending of smaller clubs that might get an influx from an investor that wants to make something big out of that club and cements the big clubs in their places. Of course, there's also the argument that, okay, so what if you get a big investor? If you have a big investor, then you have to find other ways to make money before you can start spending that money. And that investor can invest in infrastructure, in the women's clubs. Like, again, as we talked before, they don't apply to the losses. You could spend 10 billion pounds on the infrastructure of your club and make it this big, beautiful palatial estate, and it won't count towards losses at all. So it won't matter to the profit and sustainability rules. The other thing you can spend a ton of money on is the academy. Okay, so you can spend a buttload of money on the academy, sell academy players. That sort of changes the game and the structure of the way things are. Maybe that's a good way of incentivizing clubs to invest in the future by investing in their academies, because then they can sell those players for pure profits, and they're developing talent, so that raises the talent level throughout the country. There are arguments for either side of this debate, but there are some really good arguments that PSR simply limits the ability of smaller clubs with outside investment to actually make a difference in the near term and start challenging for titles. But there's probably some stuff I'm missing too, but they make it very complex, and there's a lot of moving parts. So UEFA's new football earnings regulation states clubs can book losses of just 40 million euros over the 2022-23 and 23-24 seasons, combined with a 121 million pound pre-tax loss in 21-22. Chelsea would appear up against it, to say the least, in satisfying PSR and financial fair play rules, yet sources close to Clear Lake Capital insist that they are fully compliant with PSR for 23-24. The transfers of academy graduates, including Gallagher and Matson, will help, and losing popular players like this is not a problem exclusive to Chelsea. No, it's not, but we're definitely the ones eating shit lately, having to say goodbye to Conor Gallagher and saying hello to Dewsbury Hall, because probably Dewsbury Hall is on some low-ass wages. I wonder what his wages. What is Dewsbury Hall on? Dewsbury Hall wages. Cap cut. We'll say, oh no, it's Sport Track. Capology, not cap cut. What? This is obviously not accurate. £0. Is Dewsbury Hall working for free? I don't think so. He was making £20,000 in his last a week in his last season at Leicester. So if that's any indication, again, point being that Chelsea are among the lowest average. I'm sorry, the average weekly wage in the Premier League is £72,000 a week across the whole league. Okay, and Chelsea's average weekly wage now is £60,000 after this whole institution of the new pay structure, fee structure, transfer structure. So that's important to note. And so it's obvious what Bowley and the Clear Lake Group are going for. Get all these young players on these large contracts that offer the players safety, but then offer them very low wages because they're young and they're willing to take low wages, come into Chelsea, a big club, and sort of prove themselves. But then they also have, as was said in this article, they have all these individual incentive structures and reward structures for players, which the article, the writer seems to push back against, saying, hey, that doesn't really mesh well with the spirit of the game. These players have all these individual rewards structures in their contracts when this is a team game, and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe there's something there. PSR rules dictate the departures of homegrown players count as pure profit on the balance sheet, and that led to many clubs cashing in this summer. Arsenal raised funds from the exits of academy graduates Eddie Nketiah and Emile Smith-Rowe, while Scott McTominay, who joined Manchester United at 5, left for Napoli again. So investing in the academies does not count against financial fair play and PSR. It's like free spending. So you invest in these young talents, you develop them, and then you sell them. It's pure profit. Not great for the spirit of the club, maybe not great for the culture of the club. Then we got to say goodbye to people like Conor Gallagher, who's on a high wage, but that's another complicated subject as well. While Chelsea owners are conducting business unlike their rivals, though, many working in the game are cynical about the extent to which they work the system. Okay, so other people have bad opinions about Chelsea. That's what they're saying there. By the way, if you are in here, you are new to the channel, let me take this moment to make a marketing pitch. Why not like, subscribe, hit the bell to know when I go live? Why? Because I do a lot of these live things where I peruse the news, as the show is called. And how are you going to know when I'm live if you don't hit the bell? I admit, I don't really hit the bell on many of the channels I subscribe to, but I'm starting to think if I like to watch live content, I'm hitting that bell so I get that notification. End sales pitch. Let's move on with the article. On transfer deadline day, L'Equipe reported that Chelsea were close to transferring Brazilian striker David Washington, whom they signed for 17 million euros last season and had played just 28 minutes for them, to fellow Blue Co club, again, another subsidiary club, Strasbourg, for a little more than 21 million euros. So yeah, well, Daniel Stock, thank you for showing up, buddy. Yeah, mid-article, because I've been reading this article for 40 minutes. This is a really freaking long article, but it's a juicy one. I gotta say, it's juicy. There's a lot of stuff in here. It's really chock full of stuff that's a troll hater like you would love, man, because it's throwing a lot of shade at the club, questioning all the transfer dealings and the administrative structure. But yeah, so that's why I did it. So anyway, hate. To fellow Blue Co club Strasbourg for a little more than 21 million euros. However, a source close to Clear Lake told ESPN, link me article later so I can read it. Yeah, I will. Yeah. Source, the Blues, blah, blah, blah. A permanent deal. The Blues had concerns Washington would not play regularly at Strasbourg, so a deal fell through. Strasbourg had previously loaned Petrovic and Caleb Wiley from Chelsea, but the source added that while Diego Moreira made the same move on a permanent basis, he was transferred at book value, with Chelsea not making a profit on that transfer. I just tuned in for a second and have to run now. Okay, thank you, Daniel. I love you. Come next time. I need more trolling. I miss your trolling. Have a good night, man. And outgoing transfers are a key part of the business plan. Much is made of Chelsea's £1.2 billion expenditure on players, but the club have raised more than £500 million in player sales. Chelsea spent around £220 million in the window just passed, but a source close to Clear Lake told ESPN they expect to end with a net spend of around zero. Okay, zero for, wow, including loan fees, once all the transfer windows close across the world. It is still possible that moves could be found for Chilwell, Washington, David Fofana, Harvey Vale, and Alex Matos. Why? Well, we know why, because there are, while the Premier League transfer window is closed, and I believe the Spanish window is closed, and the German window is closed, the French window is closed, there's still transfer windows that are open in Belgium, I believe, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. Those are the three I can think of right now. Greece, possibly, still open. So there are some options for getting some players off the books. Okay. Were they to achieve a net spend of around zero, that would put Chelsea approximately 14th in the Premier League for spending this summer. And that'll be something we can all rub in fellow Premier League club supporters' faces, because every single year it's the same thing. Man, Chelsea spent a ton of money. Well, eat crap, bro. We have a net spend this summer, bro. If that's true. That's just sources say. But we will find out, wouldn't we? So let me just take a sip here. Angelo Gabriel joined Saudi Pro League side Al Nasser on Monday for a fee in the region of 23 million euros. Great. Chelsea signed the teenager from Santos last summer for a reported 15 million euros, and he spent the subsequent campaign on loan at Strasbourg. He never played a minute for Chelsea, so I never played a minute, and we cashed in about £8 million. Works, I guess. That's the way things work now, I guess. Source close to Clear Lake told ESPN that Gabriel had offers from a Champions League club in the Netherlands and a Europa League club in Portugal, but chose Saudi Arabia not just for a lucrative payday, but in part because of the number of Brazilians in the league and the chance to play with Cristiano Ronaldo. Eat crap. The dude went to Saudi Arabia for a chance to play with Cristiano Ronaldo and a bunch of Brazilians? I don't think so. I think he went for the money. I mean, far be it from me. But whatever. Maybe it's true. Maybe I'm being cynical. Okay, whatever. It should be noted that other players have moved on, players who'd never appeared for the first team. Newcastle United signed Yankuba Minte from Odense Bold Club for around €7 million in June 2023, sent him on loan to Feyenoord, and then transferred him to Brighton this summer for £30 million. That's a huge win. Thank you for giving us some benefit of the doubt here at the Blues. So what happens next? Stability now is paramount. Sources close to Clear Lake insist that the sheer volume of transfer transactions will settle down. This squad needs time to gel and grow under Maresca, whose sources suggest has been given a soft target of returning the club to the Champions League by means of a top 4 finish in the Premier League. Soft target. Well, I mean, I'm certainly happy to see that they have tempered expectations, given the craziness surrounding the club. But it would really be nice to get back in the Champions League, for God's sakes. I don't want to play Conference League, man. And then lose to Servette in the second leg. We qualified, but it's still a loss. I mean, Jesus. I mean, we're okay. The B team, I mean, I've gone to this and I've said this in previous episodes. The way that our B team is performing, this is just an aside, nothing to do with the article, just is a sign of the lack of depth with this roster. Let's be real. If the B team can't beat 7th place Swiss side that had just lost 6-0 to Basel convincingly, I mean, if we can't beat them convincingly with our B team, that we're in trouble in terms of our depth, right? Just by default, logic would stand to deduce. Sources close to Clear Lake cite Real Madrid's semifinal win over Bayern Munich last season as a moment some staff realized that the Bully Clear Lake regime understand the sport they have entered. After Joselu scored twice in the final 3 minutes to secure a dramatic aggregate win for Madrid, Egbali texted an associate to say, "We need Champions League football in our lives." Gee, no shit, bro. We can spend a lot more money if we're in the Champions League, that's for sure. Make a lot more money. It's not even close. It is a lot more money if we're in the Champions League. I don't know the exact number right now. And plus, well, there are variables, but we all know it's a lot more money. Ultimately, like with any recruitment model, Chelsea have to hope their judgment is sound. For example, despite Felix's indifferent spell on loan in 2023, 4 goals from 20 appearances, and Sancho's travails at United, the club's data analysis determined that both are more likely to reach a higher level than Sterling, who is of a similar profile. Okay, that might be the case, and I'm not too confident about Felix, even though I do really like him. I do think he's really talented. His last spell wasn't great with us, and his first few games first couple, 2-3 games with us haven't been great. 2 games, I guess, because he can't even play in the Conference League. So, yeah, so I don't know. And what is Felix earning? Let's just check his wages. See if I doubt we got him for that low, to be honest. Joao Felix wages. Capology. Okay, they don't have his wages either. But let's see what he made at Madrid. Okay. Where did it not say? Let's see here. Close. So, what does it say for Felix? Okay, I guess they don't have his. But the average player at Madrid made £132,000 a week. So I doubt he was making like one of these guys down low here. He must have been making at least 130,000 pounds a week. That's my guess. Okay, who knows? Who knows exactly? But back to the article. Maresca has taken a harder line than Potter did with Chelsea's outcast. Whereas Potter tried to appease those on the periphery, Maresca split the group to focus on the 25 players that were part of his plans, leaving the others in no uncertain terms about their situation. A source close to Clearwake told ESPN that they believe a large part of the cleanup required in terms of excessive contracts for players with little to no residual transfer value has been completed. There is a strong belief that while overhauling the club's wage structure has been a difficult process, the club are now in a good place moving forward, not least with the proposed alterations to PSR rules, which will place greater emphasis on player and staff salaries. There is excitement, too, about Maresca, who sources say has impressed the players in his opening weeks with the quality of his training sessions. Yeah, he seems legit. I'll say that. In the end, whatever mistakes are made, Chelsea's owners expect the value of their asset to increase over time. Should they wish to sell the club one day, the seemingly inexorable growth of the Premier League as a global product would facilitate a profit on their investment, even though they paid the most has ever been paid for any financial institution, for any sporting institution on the planet, at £2.5 billion, right? Financial investors behave like financial investors. One figure in the football business world told ESPN, quote, "The strategy at Chelsea can be compared to the one of stock market superstar Kathy Wood. She buys and buys and buys tech, and if her fund corrects downwards, she buys even more. All the purchases are bets, huge bets. Wood has a worldwide following and enjoys the trust of the smart money, even though her fund tends to perform worse than the overall market. It's the same for Chelsea. The investors are happy and believe that one day they'll get their investments back multiple times. Chelsea are determined to succeed on their own terms. The difficult departures of Sterling and Gallagher are viewed internally as bumps in the road to assembling a squad ready to return to their old status of serial winners. Their chosen route will continue to captivate, no matter the outcome." Well, with stories like that, with pieces like that, captivating is certainly a word I would use, because it is scary, the picture they are painting of this Chelsea club. But you gotta hope that they're a little uncharitable at times in the way that they were describing the administration behind the scenes. But at the same time, probably a lot of it is true. But hopefully this way of operating will work. The larger contracts, younger players, lower wages. Like I said before, Chelsea have a average of £60,000 per week wage. The average player wage in the Premier League is £72,000. So Chelsea is actually far below the average player wage in the league, which is interesting. And there are reports from within the club that Chelsea will purportedly have a £0 net spend at the end of the season. Will that happen? We'll find out. But that is what is reported by ESPN. Okay, so the next article I want to go to is actually it's an older one from The Athletic, because not a lot of talk has been made of Kendry Paez. Excuse me. Gotta not be drinking so much carbonation. But Kendry Paez plays. There's a lot of talk about Estevao, right? But another 17-year-old, that wonder kid that is apparently coming up, is Kendry Paez. And so I saw this article from The Athletic. It looked pretty nice. I actually haven't even read it yet, so I'll be reading it for the first time with you guys. It's from back June 7th, 2024, and I will show it to y'all right now. First, there's a nice picture of Kendry there. There he is. I hate that heart sign, but it is what it is. And we'll go over to this and we'll check it out. Chelsea-bound sensation Kendry Paez, The bigger the challenge, the better he gets. From Jack Lang. Now, when you manage Independiente de Valle, you grow pretty accustomed to displays of youthful verve. The club's academy, nestled among the rolling hills on the outskirts of Quito, is not just the best in Ecuador, it is the envy of the entirety of South America. Is it? I've never heard of it. Okay. It is the envy, right. A player development mecca that has filled Independiente's coffers and breathed fresh life into the Ecuador national team. Has it, though? Was Ecuador that good? I don't know if that's true. They did not do great in the Copa America, did they? Keeping an eye out for the next big thing is just part of the job description. Okay, Martin Anselmi knew the score as Independiente's assistant coach in 2019 and 2020. He had witnessed the emergence of Moises Caicedo and Piero Hincapie. I don't really know Piero Hincapie. Sorry if that's noobish, but I don't know the guy. Two of the standout graduates of the club, of what the club calls its high performance center. When he returned to manage the first team in May 2022, he expected a whole new generation of teenagers to be knocking at the door. Still, he wasn't ready for this. He wasn't ready for Kendry Páez. A couple of months into the job, Anselmi sat down to watch Independiente's under-18s. They were playing their first game in the Copa Mitad del Mundo, the middle of the World Cup, a tournament that the club organizes every year. It was a decent match, shaded by the hosts, but it would not have stuck in the memory were it not for one second-half substitution. The board went up. On came Páez, a tricksy little attacking midfielder. Anselmi had heard whispers about him, but had never seen him in action. Páez was 15, 3 years younger than most of the other players on the pitch, but you would never have known it from his swagger. You know I like that. The very first time he got the ball, he flicked the ball over the heads of two players and played a 40-meter pass to the opposite wing, recalls Anselmi. I was stunned. It was the start of a fruitful relationship, quite a funny one too. After the tournament ended, Páez scored twice in the final as Independiente beat Atlético Nacional of Colombia. The teenager became a full-time nuisance to Anselmi, constantly accosting him at the training ground and asking when he was going to be called up to the first team. That's my guy. I was always taught to be that guy. I remember walked in to the varsity team when I was in basketball team when I was in 6th grade and just pestered the coach. You're going to play me? You're going to pick me up? I know I'm not supposed to be here, but will you play me? I'm not even going to play for the JV team. I want to play for the varsity team. And I did get picked up in the end. Anyway, so sometimes, when Anselmi passed him in the corridor, Páez would simply point his index finger upwards, indicating that it was time for a promotion. Over time, he grew even more confident. I'll be your number 10, he would tell Anselmi, to howls of amusement from anyone within earshot. And captain. Arrogant? Certainly. Deluded? The evidence would suggest not. Less than 2 years after first catching Anselmi's eye, Páez is Independiente's star player. He is a regular in the Ecuador team, a national idol in the making, and will be one of the main attractions at this summer's Copa America. They didn't do great. Let's be real. But anyway, I don't remember how Páez did, but must have been good because Chelsea picked him up. Oh, well, they picked him up before that, I guess. He has already agreed to join Chelsea, where he will be reunited with Caicedo after he turns 18. Yeah, that's coming up soon. That's not until next May. Well, soon as in next May, but next season. Goodness knows what he and his fast forward button have planned between now and then. The hope for him and for anyone who likes their football sprinkled with impish magic is that he can maintain the upward trajectory. There are a few small red lights on the dashboard, questions about whether Páez is ready for the level of fame and scrutiny that are coming his way. He's already got like 700,000 followers on Instagram. What is not up for debate is the magnitude of his talent. Technically superlative, Anselmi calls him. And that is no outlier view. He is a sensation in his homeland, a schoolboy superstar. The only people who don't expect Páez to become the best football Ecuador has ever produced are those who are convinced that he already is. Now that is a statement, and we got this kid. So, I mean, that's crazy. But we'll find out. Maybe this is the Athletic just with their purple journalism being very, very hyperbolic, but it does seem that people are expecting a lot out of him. in the same way that they're expecting a lot out of Esteval. But this guy has not played in Palmeiras. I mean, as we'll look later, we'll look at some of the stats, but this kid hasn't left Ecuador. Barely got out of the U18s. But, I mean, to be fair, he was in Ecuador's national squad. I don't know how much he actually played in the Copa America. I don't remember. We could take a look at that, and maybe we will take a look at that. But the point is he hasn't left Ecuador, and he's already this highly touted. Could not mean much, but we'll find out. He's on another level. Former Ecuador striker Carlos Tenorio said last year, these players are not born every day. Those who know Paez well are similarly enthused. Without doubt, Kendry has something special, says Carlos Cajas, one of his former youth coaches. Cristian Pelerano, the former Independiente captain and one-time mentor to the youngster, is even more emphatic. Paez grew up in Isla Trinitaria, one of the poorer neighborhoods of Guayaquil, Ecuador's second largest city. Money was always tight. Paez often went to school hungry and was always aware that his parents were up against it. Football provided a welcome distraction, and not just to young Kendry. His dad, Ray, played, as did his uncles, but it was his mother, Jessica, who was his first inspiration. Quote, I used to watch her play in my neighborhood, Paez told ESPN last year. It was amazing to see how good she was. My parents were both spectacular players. I was also given the gift. Aged 5, Paez started training at a local soccer school. Later, he was briefly on the books at top division club Emelec and turned out for an amateur team in Guayaquil called Hooligans FC. At 10, Paez joined the academy at Patria, one of Ecuador's most historic teams. There, his wiry framed and wand of a left foot reminded his teammates of someone. Di Maria, they called Paez, after Argentina winger Angel. The nickname stuck, following him to Independiente de Valle when he moved there 2 years later. It was not a straightforward transition. Paez had already been scouted by LDU Quito, who believed they had reached an agreement with the player's parents and agent. On the first Monday of the season, he was supposed to come and train with us, recalls Cajas, who worked at LDU at the time, but when the day came, he didn't show up. Instead, Paez had gone to Independiente's training complex. The man behind the coup was Luis Ruggiero, the club's former sporting director, who had also been on Paez's tail for some time. Quote, our scout told us that he had found a player with a special talent, but that the club would have to make a significant effort financially to be able to sign him, Ruggiero tells The Athletic, so they paid the kid. Quote, it was going to cost much more than the club was used to paying for a 12-year-old kid, so we had to make sure that he did indeed have all the potential that our scout had detected. Ruggiero spoke with Roberto Olabe, a renowned Spanish coach who was acting as a consultant for Independiente. The club has a long-standing collaboration agreement with the Aspire Academy in Qatar. Olabe, who is now sporting director at Real Sociedad, helped to shape the youth methodology across the network. I asked Roberto to evaluate Kendry, recalls Ruggiero. He came back to me a few days later and said that the kid was very, very good. He said that Kendry saw things 2 passes before anyone else did, and also had the ability to execute on his ideas. His message was simple. We just had to get him. Sounds good. Sounds good to Chelsea fans. With Olabe's seal of approval, Ruggiero went to the club's board, who found enough money to get the deal done. How much money are they paying for a 12-year-old? Jeez. There was, from the get-go, a buzz about Paez. Roberto Arroyo, the club's current sporting director, was youth coordinator at the time and remembers the excitement he felt watching Paez's first training session. Quote, his control of the ball was excellent, Arroyo tells The Athletic. Quote, he had good vision. He could beat his man. We see hundreds of players every year, but you do notice when a kid is different to the rest. It's good to hear. Nor was it just a question of technique. In the months that followed, it was Paez's intelligence on the pitch that really came to the fore. He was a central playmaker at heart, but looked just as comfortable in central midfield or even on the wing. Wherever he played, he seemed to have an innate feel for the evolving rhythms of a match. We really like players who understand football, Arroyo says. When a kid can read the game better than the others, you only have to work on the details. There was always this consensus about Kendry. We all agreed that he had a future at the club. Paez had been at Independiente for a couple of years when he crossed paths with an old acquaintance, Cajas, the youth coach who had previously tried to sign him for LDU, had switched clubs himself. As fate would have it, he was Paez's new manager. And, at the outset at least, he wasn't bowled over by what he saw. My first impression was that Kendry had talent and potential, but wasn't yet able to develop it. Okay, Cajas tells the Athletic. Quote, my initial perception, which was confirmed when I began to work with him on a day-to-day basis, was that he didn't have the right attitude. He saw himself as a very talented kid, and he did stand out on a technical level, but he didn't have a good approach to training. Okay, okay, it's important, but he was 15 years old, maybe, or 12 years old, so okay. Cajas got on Paez's case. He told him he had to train with the same commitment he showed in matches. He urged him to contain his frustration with his teammates when they made mistakes. He also told him to tidy his room. Sounds like a little Jordan Peterson in him right there. Make your room. Make your bed. Or was it clean your room? I think it's clean your room. Quote, we ended up having a real emotional connection, says Cajas. After we talked about his messiness, he was always the one with the cleanest room. He was willing to learn. He just needed a little bit of order and discipline. The same was true on the pitch. Paez would switch off out of possession. Even when he gave the ball away, he rarely chased back or sought to make amends. Quote, he would just stand there, waiting for his teammates to win it back and return it to him, laughs Cajas. That was something we worked on a lot. This was at under 16 level. Paez, in fairness, was still only 14, and while Cajas was keen to fine-tune certain parts of his game, he was also in awe of him. Paez played at the right-sided central midfielder in a 4-3-3 formation, but his exuberance transcended tactics. With the ball at his feet, he was a free-wheeling force of nature. Kendry had many strengths: ball control, first touch, vision, but what stood out to me was just how much joy he played with, says Cajas. It was beyond systems, beyond positioning. It was all a game to him. It was play. Case in point, Paez loved to pick the ball up on the right side and set off on a mazy diagonal dribbles, twisting defenders inside and out en route to the penalty box. Often he would beat 2, 3, even 4 players before shooting or setting up a teammate, Cajas recalls. It was his trademark run, and he used to do it constantly. I even gave it a name, La Magnifica. After the Copa Mitad del Mundo, Independiente traveled to Salzburg, Austria, to take part in another international youth tournament, the Next Generation Trophy, an under-16 competition put on by Red Bull. I would love to referee one of those things, gotta say. There, they beat RB Leipzig, New York Red Bulls, and Inter Milan, and while they lost in the final to Yilen Olympique of Mali, Paez headed home with a trophy for player of the tournament. Under 16 already. His displays put a number of top European clubs on alert. Manchester United and Borussia Dortmund were among those sniffing around in later stages of 2022. They also changed the dynamic at Independiente, convincing many fans that Paez needed to be bumped up to the first team at the earliest opportunity. If you're just coming in right now, we're reading this article from The Athletic that came out in June, about just before the Copa America, about Kendry Paez, a 17-year-old that isn't as talked about as Estival, but will be coming to Chelsea in May of next season, and apparently is the next big thing according to Ecuador's biggest academy and Ecuadorian nationals more broadly. Anselmi heeded those calls at the start of 2023, including the 15-year-old in his squad for pre-season. We were not certain that he was ready to compete in the first division, admits Anselmi. It was a case of taking care of him, progressing little by little so he could adjust to the rhythm of senior football. Again, he's only ever played in the Ecuadorian league, while Estevao is 17 and playing for Palmeiras in the Serie A. I don't know how they pronounce it in Brazil, but the top league in Brazil, and scoring goals, which we will talk about the difference in their stats, but it is what it is. We'll see how they both progress. Paez had a brief run out in a friendly against Guayaquil City, but his first real chance came in Independiente's first league game of the season against Mushuk Runa, starting at the left-sided attacking midfielder. As the left-sided attacking midfielder in Anselmi's 3-4-2-1 system, Paez capped a sparky display with his first senior goal, coolly lobbying the goalkeeper from an acute angle with his weaker foot. We got a comment from Sane Masuku. Big up. Do you think Sterling strengthens or weakens Arsenal? I will take this break to answer that. I think either way, they're getting him for pennies, dude. I mean, I think he's going to strengthen them because I don't even think he's 30 yet. I think he's still 29. He's in the prime of his playing career. He's one of the, whether he's in form or people think he's in form or not, he's one of the top Premier League natural out and out wingers. And his experience is like, I mean, the guy's played for Liverpool, for Manchester City under Pep Guardiola, and for Chelsea under, well, not the greatest managerial talent, but certainly the kid's experience is vast. And Chelsea are paying most of his wages. You know, we're paying £10 million for this kid this year. So he's on £350,000 a week, and Chelsea are paying more than half of that. So Arsenal, if anything, are getting Raheem Sterling for a bargain, and they didn't even have to pay a loan fee. So that's a good question. Really, for Arsenal, it's a no-brainer. And meanwhile, we're taking sort of Manchester United's reject and paying a loan fee and obligation to buy if we finish like 10th or better at the end of the season. But that's a good question, Sane. Thank you for stopping by, man. Appreciate it. I'm going to throw a heart there. Heart. Can I heart your... it's not letting me heart your thing, but I would heart you. I would heart your question. Thank you. Are you an Arsenal fan or a Chelsea fan? Not that it matters. You're welcome, but just curious. I'll continue reading here. It was no flash in the pan either. 2 games later, he started against Barcelona, the biggest team in Ecuador. We decided to see what he was made of, says Anselmi. And do I need to fix this so you can see his comment in here? Yeah, I think I do. I'm going to pull it up a little bit. Pull up that. I didn't realize that the chat was so low. Oh, it's cropped. That's why. Just fix that real quick. Yeah, that's why. Fixing. There you go. Boom. Okay. Now you can see it. All right. Moving back to the article. You know what? There we go. Okay. By the way, actually, before I continue the article, why not give you my little marketing pitch here, whoever's in here? Please, if you get a chance, like, subscribe to the channel. That's the most important things. And if you want, I'm not exactly the guy that does this so much, but hit the bell because guess what? I've been doing a lot of these live sessions, going through the news, reading what's interesting, catching up, and how are you going to know if I'm going live if you don't hit the bell? I generally do go live around 8 Eastern Standard Time, but the days have not been settled yet. The channel is still small, so subscribe while you still can. Well, not that you won't be able to subscribe, but while we're still small, I'll see you. I'll notice you. It's big. Have a question in the chat, or, you know, engage, because right now is the time. This channel is growing all the time, and I appreciate you guys coming by. I really do. But let's continue on this article about Kendry Páez because it's really interesting, and we're gonna need some big talents in the near future if we want to be able to compete. I mean, right now we're sort of haphazardly thrown together, but you never know who could rise above the cream of the crop, right? Esteval's been talked about a lot, but Kendry Páez is the same exact age, and he has big hype surrounding him coming out of Ecuador. So it was no flash in the pan either. 2 games later, he started against Barcelona, the biggest team in Ecuador. Quote, we decided to see what he was made of, says Anselmi, and he was one of the best players on the pitch. Immediately after his first preseason, he was a fixture in the team. Cristian Pellerano, Independiente's captain at that time, remembers the impact Páez made on him. Quote, my first impression was of a player whose individual technique was very advanced, Pellerano tells The Athletic. He controlled the ball in this natural way. However it came to him, it wasn't normal. That first goal, for example, it would have been a tough chance for any other player, but he resolved it with ease. Those little details in his game made me think that he was going to be a transcendent transcendent player. Within a few weeks, pretty much everyone in Ecuador shared that opinion. Paez shone at the South American Under-17 Championship 2 goals and 6 assists as Ecuador finished second to Brazil. And then at the Under-20 World Cup, 1 goal and 3 assists in 4 games. Big. At which point we have to dust off the accelerator pedal. Paez was called up to the senior Ecuador squad and agreed to sign for Chelsea on the same day in June, made his international debut in September, and became the youngest scorer in South American World Cup qualifying history that following month, age 16 and 161 days. There was no challenge he did not overcome in that year, says Anselmi. That's not normal for a kid his age. The bigger the challenge, the better he got. By the end of 2023, the rave reviews were coming in thick and fast. He has everything it takes to be better than Lionel Messi. Where have we heard this before? Per Tenorio, the former Ecuador forward. He's a superstar, said Andres Chicaiza, who faced Paez during his time at LDU. We have to enjoy him because a kid like that only comes along once every 50 years. Anselmi, who now manages Cruz Azul in Mexico, is no less enthusiastic. These are some big endorsements, testimonials, you can say. He always surprised me with his technique and his fluency, he says. He knows how to find space, knows where he can hurt the opposition. But for me, his biggest asset is his personality. He's kind of cheeky, irresponsible in a good way. That's what I like to see. That's what gets me excited, okay? Because those are the things, the intangibles that take a player to the next level. You know what I'm saying? You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not that cheeky, irreverent, attitude-filled type of person, maybe you won't get there. Paez's agent, Manuel Sierra, probably did not realize quite how prophetic his words would come to seem. It's very difficult at 16, Sierra told Spanish newspaper AS in January. Imagine everything that's coming his way, all the temptations and requests. The temptations part was pretty neatly covered in late March, even when photos showing Paez on a night out in New York circulated online. It emerged that the midfielder, 16 at the time, remember, had gone to a club with Ecuador teammates on the eve of their friendly against Italy. Some of the players, including Paez, were also pictured in a strip club. How's he getting into that strip club? 16. The Ecuadorian Federation issued a statement in which they described the events as contrary to the values and principles that we defend and promote, and although Paez's more experienced colleagues copped the bulk of the criticism in the local press, the photos did ring a few alarm bells. Was Ecuador's boy wonder allowing himself to be led astray? At the very least, it is clear that Paez is no wallflower. He has, thus far, leaned into his newfound fame rather than away from it. His personality always attracts attention, said Jonathan Loachamin, who covers Independiente for local radio station Radio Super K. He is boisterous and likes to be at the center of the madness. There is nothing inherently wrong with that, of course, but some fear it may ultimately cost him. Quote, I would love him to be a global star, but I think it's possible that he doesn't reach that level, says Cajas. That's partly down to the idiosyncrasies of Ecuadorian football. Okay, now they're reeling it back. Certain habits and lifestyles are prevalent among footballers in our country. The background, the entourages. Football gives players riches that would be unimaginable in their previous lives. At Independiente, Kendry is working inside a structure that is very well developed and organized, but it still cannot match the standards expected of players at the top of European clubs in terms of behavior and engagement. He needs someone to help him make the right decisions and mental support so he is able to stay on track, though, through everything he is experiencing. He needs to do a lot of extra work and training on his life habits, on the intangible things. That does not bode well. I don't love the idea of, a bright young talent that is very easily coaxed and influenced by the lavishes and riches of the football world at such a young age. That could kill a player early, or sort of early into their thriving top tier career, like you could say Ronaldinho, even just a name that pops into mind, because he did great things, but then it wasn't long before he was killed by Paris, killed by the partying. It can, of course, be easy to forget that we are talking about a child here. A dose of empathy is required. Quote, it's not as simple as saying that the boy is immature, says Arroyo, Independiente's sporting director. He is already a public figure, especially in our country. We might have to nudge him sometimes, tell him why he shouldn't do certain things, but you have to consider his age. Yeah, it's got to be tough. I mean, people are saying you're the next big thing, period, in Ecuador. And he's still staying on track for the most part. He did get signed by Chelsea. The tricky thing for Paez is that he's still a year away from really finding out how far he can go. He can only move to Chelsea after he turns 18 next May. In the interim, he will just have to focus on, well, what exactly? Already, the Ecuadorian ecosystem looks too small for him. KFC are among Independiente's shirt sponsors. Paez is such an outsized presence in the public consciousness that those initials might as well stand for Kendry Football Club. That's cute. This summer's Copa America is a welcome challenge. Not only have Ecuador never won the tournament, and they did not win the tournament. Like I said, this is a slightly older article from June. They haven't reached the semifinals since 1993 after a favorable draw. I don't think they even reached the semifinals. I have to double check that. La Tri are in a group with Mexico, Venezuela, and Jamaica. Paez and the rest of a promising new generation stand a decent chance of updating that record in the USA. Therefore, the priority will be winning his first trophy with Independiente, which he did not win, and preparing himself for the Premier League. That's his most important objective, arriving at Chelsea in good shape, says Arroyo. If he doesn't arrive at his best, he'll just be another squad player, and that's not what anyone wants. And the truth is that it's going to be hard to be more than that at Chelsea, especially with the way things are going, with our squad being inflated, with the amount of wingers that we have. It's going to be tough. Anselmi reiterates that view. There's a long road ahead, but he has to start getting ready for Europe already, he says. Before moving, you have to be prepared, physically, intellectually, financially, in terms of the language. Paez has been taking English lessons for some time. He has a nutritionist and does private work with a video analyst. He still attends school classes 3 days a week at Independiente's training center. I don't think I'm a big deal, he told ESPN last year. I'm always humble. I have things to work on. I know the time is going to pass quickly. Very good. Those are the right things to say, right? That interview, admittedly, was given last June. Paez might have expected the milestones to have arrived a little more gradually thereafter, to be spaced out over 2 years, say. Instead, they all rushed to the front of the timetable. It is to Paez's credit that he has managed to clamber over them all so nimbly. What happens next is contingent on his maintaining that momentum. No easy task, given that he must already have ticked off half the items on his footballing bucket list. Quote, he has been burning through stages, but he must be wary of becoming complacent, says Anselmi. That is always dangerous. I'm not talking about the level of the Ecuadorian league. I'm talking about human motivation. What drives us? If at 17 years old, you're already a starter for your club team, you already play for your national team, you're already a star, how do you find the next challenge? Part of the responsibility falls on Independiente, but a lot of the motivation will have to come from within. Paez must know that he could easily coast through the next year without the dial on the hype machine lowering much. The question is whether that he allows that knowledge to trip him up. It's going to turn on his desire, his intensity, his way of approaching the challenge, says Pellerano. It's going to depend purely and exclusively on him. He has what it takes to be a big star. I hope that he can make the leap. Cool. Well, guys, anybody who's out there, we're hoping for the best here, aren't we? I mean, it's going to be tough for him to get into Chelsea's starting 11. I mean, and also, let's not forget, we've got Estevao coming in too, which brings me to this next part, which I wanted to show the difference in these two players. I mean, if he thinks he's going to come next season, like Estevao's coming next season, and get right into the starting 11, that's going to be really tough. Of course, we're already loaded up with seasoned wingers. Some that I'm not I don't fancy so much, but they still are there. And look at this. You've got Estevao here too, and they're the same age, except he's a lot more experienced, and he's got a lot more goals in his domestic league, and the domestic league that he plays in is a lot more competitive. I don't know how much he played for Brazil. No, he hasn't played a single match for his national team. I guess that's something that Kendry has going for him as far as those two go. But Estevao, as you see, 17 years old, also left-footed. They're both left-footed, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, both left-footed. And Estevao has 8 goals and 7 assists in 17 starts for Palmeiras first team. That's no joke for a 17-year-old, okay? Those are like maybe what, Neymar numbers when he was there. So 2 yellow cards in 21 matches, not bad. And that's a really low number of yellow cards, to be fair, for a young player. 0 red cards, yeah, a lot of minutes played. Again, 10 total goals and 36 appearances at age 17 for Palmeiras in Brazil's top league. And then you've got Kendry, who we just talked about, who's just a little bit taller, about a centimeter taller. Also left-footed, plays more of an attacking midfielder, according to FotMob, but as we know, he's played right midfielder, central midfielder, and right winger. So I don't know, maybe he'll evolve more into sort of 10 or 8 position for Chelsea, which that actually would be a better chance for him at getting in the squad. When was the last time we had a 17-year-old play, or an 18-year-old, as he will be, play in the first team? It's very unlikely, but you never know, especially if he can play there. And we still don't have a lot of talent there, because obviously we're right now operating with Caicedo, Fernandez, and, well, Lavia's great and also very young, 20 years old. But so, I mean, who knows? But again, a little taller, not as much experience, but look at that. 13 appearances for Ecuador's national team and 2 goals for Ecuador's national team. And 2 goals in, it doesn't say that he's played any matches this season, but it says he has 2 goals this season for Independiente, who has played 5 matches this season. Yeah. Anyway, 12 goals and 55 appearances for Independiente in the Ecuadorian league. So there's that. Just taking a look over at the poll now that we have a second after having checked those 2 out before the last article of the day. But just to have a look, people, who should deputize at right back while Gusto and James are out? We have 0% for Axel Disasi. I'm happy with that, man, I gotta say, because I don't rate him, and I'll say it over and over again for people coming in and out. 29% think Marc Cucurella should play there. Probably, you have to assume if 29% think Marc Cucurella should play right back while Gusto and James are out, that they believe that probably either Levi Colwill should slide over to left back and cover for Cucurella there, and then have probably either Tosin Arabioyo or Badiashile come in and play in the left part of the center back position for Colwill, or Renato Vega play on the left, and then 29% think Moises Caicedo should play that right back position, and then 45% think other. And none of them said anything about who that other person should be. So we will move on to the third and final article of the day. We're going late today, but I'm fine with that. That is going to be a short one, so kudos. That works. Chelsea star is named as one of the Premier League signings of the summer by Peter Crouch, as the former forward picks out his top 3 moves from the window. Peter Crouch has named one of Chelsea's new signings as one of his top 3 arrivals of the summer in the Premier League. The Blues were once again active in the transfer market as they spent £220 million completing deals for a number of players, including the likes of Joao Felix, Kieran Dewsbury Hall. What's going on there? Why is it? Okay. Kieran Dewsbury Hall and Philip Jorgensen. They continue to spend money under the Clear Lake ownership, while several other stars, including Conor Gallagher and Raheem Sterling, departing on either loan or permanent deals after being banished from Enzo to Enzo Maresca's bomb squad. Time will tell if each arrival proves to be a success or not, but one player who joined for big money has been praised by former Premier League striker Crouch. That man was Pedro Neto, who joined the London side from Wolves for £54 million in perhaps one of the shock moves of the summer. I'm happy with him. Speaking on TNT Sports, Crouch was asked to name his top 3 signings of the summer window and replied, Pedro Neto from Wolves to Chelsea. I think he's a top player. I think many in Europe would have signed him, and Chelsea have got a top one there along with many others, but I think he's a top signing. Neto made the move to the capital after 5 years with Wolves, initially joining for £16 million from Lazio and going on to make 135 appearances, scoring 14 goals. We love him. I love him. I'm certainly happy with Pedro Neto. I assume other Chelsea fans are very happy with Neto, even though he hasn't really seen much of the ball, hasn't really seen too many minutes, and we're not playing great as a team. But you've seen his quality, you've seen his class, and certainly he's one of the more appealing new faces that we're seeing at the club. The Portugal international added to the host of wingers at the Blues' disposal, which also now includes Jadon Sancho, who signed on a season-long loan with an obligation to buy from Manchester United on deadline day. Okay, we don't need to go over that. Yeah, Mikhailo Mudryk, Noni Madueke, and Christopher Nkunku are among the club's other wide options. We know. Picking out the other 2 signings in his top 3, Crouch referenced Max Kilman of West Ham and Dominic Solanke of Tottenham. Solanke, former Chelsea Academy boy, starting to make his way up. Went to Bournemouth. Now he's at Tottenham. We'll see if he can do the job there. I'm hoping for the best for him, but not against us and not at our expense, of course. Kilman also left Wolves, joining up with former manager Julian Lopetegui in a £40 million move, while Solanke departed Bournemouth for £65 million. That is a lot of money. I wonder if we made money on that. I don't think so, but it's possible. End of the article. Max Kilman at West Ham is a top signing. Crouch added, very solid. I think he's shown in the first few games, and he's saying it's one of his top picks. That's interesting. I think he's shown in the first few games that he brings the ball out, retains the ball really well, top player. And I think Dominic Solanke at Tottenham, only because I don't think they replaced Harry Kane since he left as the focal point. I think they've got enough ability in and around it, but a number 9 at Spurs, once he gets over his injury, I think he'll score and do the business. That is some big words from Crouchy. Putting a lot of faith in Dominic Solanke. I mean, he scored for Bournemouth, but did he really score that much? Did he make that big of a splash? I don't know if it's the case. Yeah, so let's go over to... We're done. That's all the articles we're going to read today. It was a lot. We're definitely gone way over, but I appreciate anybody who's still in the channel. If you're still in the channel, please do me a solid. Do yourself a solid. Let's be real, because this is just so much fun. Maybe give the stream a like. Maybe subscribe to the channel. Maybe hit the bell to know when we go live, because all this right here, this up in here, that, this, that, all those things. That's my totally unnecessary dance, but yeah, all this is what we be doing. We be live streaming lately. We've been doing it a lot, and if you want to know when we're going live, the best way to know is to hit that bell, because sometimes it's at 8 p.m. on a weekday or a weekend, but other times it's whenever the heck I decide. So there we go for now, until people start saying otherwise when they prefer us. But let's go over to Instagram just before we head out. Last thing, let's stalk some of our favorite Chelsea players, some new, some old, some future. Pedro Neto, what's he got going on? Playing for, Portugal national team. Good to see him with Bruno Fernandes. There we go. Romeo Lavia. I don't know. What's this all about? Oh, it's a buddy of his. Okay, he's reposting one of his buddies. That's fine. Good for you. Really loving Lavia lately. Renato Vega playing for Portugal. Good luck, buddy. David Washington, really kind of no longer a Chelsea player. He was supposed to go to Strasbourg. That fell through. What else we got? Rui Faria, ex-Chelsea coach And look, he posts himself wearing a Chelsea outfit, eh? In an era of numbers, controlling the load is used to manage players' performances and availability. For the numbers enthusiasts, perhaps the next data set should control the efficiency of the data that controls player load and relate the results to player availability. It would be good to know how effectively the load is controlled. I assume he's still working with Jose Mourinho, so he's probably at Fenerbahce. I wonder why he's posting this, but is he worried about player loads? Super Frankie Lampard reposting his wife. Drogba posting an old match, which I don't think I can really show here. I'll get a strike. Reece James looking sweaty as all hells, probably in recovery. Yeah. Noni looking great next to Anthony Gordon and Morgan Gibbs-White on his first England call-up, senior England call-up. Good for him. Congratulations, buddy. You're doing great. Petrovic, I guess he's playing. Okay, so he's with Serbia now. Good for him. I mean, I think Chelsea fans are not super hyped that he's not playing for us now, and we've got Sanchez and Jorgensen not really showing the best, and Petrovic was awesome. So good to see him smiling, though. He's playing for Strasbourg now on loan. Okay, that's it. That's it for stories. All right, guys. Well, again, I'll repeat. If you're in here and you just came by and you want to come back and you're new to the channel, do me a solid. Do yourself a solid. Give it a like. Give it a subscribe. Did it come up? Come on up. Where is it? All right. It's not wanting to come up right now, but that's okay. Like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell if you want to know when we go live. If you like to watch live streams, we've been doing this a lot. We've been perusing the news. The show is called Peruse the News. The channel is called Reading Between the Headlines. I'm Asaf Nassim, and I hope you all live football and prosper. Until next time, boys. See you later. That was the wrong button. See you later.
Soccer? But it's really called football. Soccer?
The creators called it football.
Soccer?
You know, you play it with your feet.
Reading between the headlines. Soccer? But it's really called football.